Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to listen. My name is Sarah Shan Kesty, and I am an ongoing case manager for the Oneida Nation Indian Child Welfare Department. I'm speaking to you all today because April is National Child Abuse and Neglect Awareness Month, and it's a great time to raise awareness and show our commitment to protecting the children and families within our communities. Our children are truly the foundation of our entire society. They are our future, and there's no other people on the face of this planet more important than they are. And that is why it's so important to keep them protected. There's been many studies that have shown that when children are raised in environments that are loving and nurturing and supportive, they are more likely to prosper academically and financially, and more likely to become successful, responsible, contributing members of our society. Investing in the protection of our children not only benefits our children themselves, but it benefits our entire society, our entire world. Today, I really wanted to focus on what abuse and neglect looks like and the importance of calling the proper authorities and making a report if you feel something not so good is happening within a home. And then I wanted to talk about the impact it has on a person long term and lifelong if we don't report, and what role we can play in doing this and preventing it from happening by bringing it out into the light where it needs to be. For so many years, child abuse has been hid away in the darkness, and it will never be stopped if it stays in the darkness. Abuse and neglect could not be put on a shelf and forgotten. It will not go away if we stay quiet, even though throughout history, that's been the common thought. It's not a small issue, better to be solved between family members, and it cannot ever be swept underneath the rug and forgotten. It's way too vital of an issue. It's not only a national tragedy, but it is a tragedy worldwide. And it absolutely can be prevented. And every single person can and should play a part in preventing this tragedy. And that act may potentially have the potential of causing a ripple effect that has the ability and the power to change so very much. A person does not need to be an expert in the exact definitions of what child abuse and neglect are. That's the responsibility of the child protective services, case managers, and social workers, and the law enforcement and the court systems. But what a person does need is to have the responsibility to understand the signs of possible abuse and neglect, so then they are better prepared to recognize different situations and better prepared to make those reports that need to be made to the proper authorities. I say that if a person has any sort of feeling within their gut, within their heart, they should never ignore that feeling. Even if they're not completely sure, or they even if they have questions, never ignore it. Report it. Report what it is you suspect. And always remember that your confidentiality will always be protected. Even if the person who's been reported says, "I know it was you. They told me it was you." That simply is not true. All states require certain professionals or institutions to report suspected child abuse or neglect. These people are called mandated reporters, but not everyone needs to be a mandated reporter in order to report. Abuse and neglect happens for a wide variety of reasons. May it be mental health concerns that are diagnosed or undiagnosed, addictions, drug dependencies, homelessness, lack of a solid support system, financial difficulties, just to name a few. Or a parent may simply not know a better way to take care of their child. If that's all they know because of how they were raised, how do they know anything different until they're taught? In many cases, identifying parents who need help by offering support and education can become a simple answer to avoiding abuse and neglect. So maybe a parent is only parenting in the way that they know how, and they simply need some parenting education to teach them a different way. We all as human beings only know what we know until we know something different. And speaking out for a child in need helps the parent get back on the right track to learn something new and have an opportunity and a chance to become a better parent. And it also gives the child's story a voice, and it gives them the security and the safety that they so deserve. And that one act of making a phone call or talking to someone can have can have a lasting positive effect that changes the direction of the child's entire life. Some people who know or suspect child abuse and neglect are happening might be unwilling to get involved when they're not sure or they don't know the whole story. Sometimes people are afraid to speak up because the person who they suspect who is doing the abuse may be a powerful or valuable person within the community. And throughout history, there's been a negative stigma throughout all of society and media about child protection agencies, and people fear reporting. They're too scared to get involved or step on another's toes, or they don't become involved because quite simply it doesn't involve them. So they step aside and don't report and allow it to happen. Maybe they fear that that important person is going to come back and harm them or their family somehow. Or they may fear that reporting may harm the child more than do them any good. So a child who stays quiet and doesn't talk to anyone about their abuse may do so out of loyalty for their parent or caregiver. Or they may also fear they're not going to be believed, and fear they're going to get in trouble, or sadly nothing's going to get done, and or they're threatened harm or death, or they're threatened that somebody within their family that they love is going to be hurt if they say anything. There's also shame and an embarrassment attached. So then nothing gets done if no one says anything, and the child continues to endure abuse, and the abusive cycle continues. So what is it that we can look for? There's four different types of abuse. There's physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. And most often, more than one of those abuses are happening at the same time. There's no cultural or economic boundaries, and it can affect any family at any time. Neglect can easily be overlooked, and it's often hard to spot. Child neglect is when a parent or caregiver persistently fails to meet the basic physical and psychological needs of a child. This results then in impairment of the child's health, schooling, well-being, mental health. Signs that a parent is neglecting a child can look like lack of interest in their in progress, whether it be health, well-being, schooling. And most of the time, a parent who is neglecting a child is really experiencing some extreme difficulties themselves. More often than not, the abuse occurs because of some underlying factors happening within that parent's or caregiver's life. I do not whatsoever believe that any parent wakes up one morning and says, "Yep, I'm going to intentionally harm my child today." There's always something more behind the abuse, and that parent or caregiver needs some help. Neglect can involve not providing adequate food, clothing, or medical care, locking a child in a room or a closet, abandoning the child or excluding them from the family home, uh, uh, placing or leaving a child in a situation in which they might experience emotional or physical harm. Many times we hear a child say, "Nobody's at home to take care of me. Read me a book, put me to bed, or even feed me." So then, when this neglect is happening, we often see children who need glasses and they don't get their glasses, or need serious dental work done, and that doesn't get done. We see unwashed clothing, hair, or skin. Sometimes it's the child themselves that starts using drugs and alcohol. They're missing school frequently and they're getting into fights. So that is why it's so important to report it when you see it. Sexual abuse often occurs with someone the child knows and is very close to the family. Often the child is being told to keep the relationship a secret. They may be threatened that something bad is going to happen if they tell anybody. And an adult who carries out sexual abuse with a child may have been a sexual abuse victim themselves. Breaking this cycle may require serious treatment and help, but may help prevent passing it down to the next generation. Physical abuse is a much more noticeable type of abuse. It is easy to see the bruises, the welts, cuts, or burns on a child's face or neck or back. And sometimes those bruises or injuries might be in the shape of a hand, a cord, a belt, or something else. Sometimes we see unexplained burns and cuts on the palms of the hands or the soles of the feet, or unexplained black eyes or broken bones or bites, and they don't fit the story of how it occurred. A child may show extremes in their behavior, such as being very aggressive or withdrawn. A child may fear going home or protesting going to a certain location where the abuse may have occurred. And a child may become very fearful of a particular person. So, as I said before, abuse and neglect is absolutely preventable. As a society, we must bring it into the light to break the long history of negative stigmas. If we don't, there's devastating consequences. Those devastating consequences can lead to problems with the child, with trust and relationship difficulties, problems in school and learning disorders. And often it leaves a child feeling worthless and having a low self esteem, a loss of self identity, and difficulties recognizing and regulating their emotions. In many cases, the child may up grow up into an adult to become an abuser themselves. There's been extensive studies that have shown how profound this really is. There's been a lot of research showing us the linkage between traumatic early childhood experiences and toxic negative experiences and the long term impacts it has on a person's physical and mental health, and also on our public health system, and to add the effect it has on our social system across the globe. Extensive studies have shown us how toxic stress and early trauma affects a child on a biological level, delaying their natural development, hindering their ability to manage stress, and even altering their DNA. Specific studies have taught us that children exposed to toxic stress of abuse and neglect can suffer prolonged, lifelong consequences, such as chronic depression, anxiety, impulse control issues, a greater likelihood of addiction tendencies, substance use, and risky behaviors such as unsafe sex or criminal acts. There's a higher risk of heart disease and autoimmune disorders, certain cancers, diabetes, stroke, mental illness, obesity, suicide. You name it, it affects us, and it affects us long term. In addition, adult survivors of childhood abuse are more likely to have lower levels of health than those who have not experienced child abuse. I believe that knowledge is key. At least it was for me. It was enough for me to break the cycle of abuse in my own family. It opened my eyes to serious self awareness and healing. The healing began for me when I opened my mind and my heart to learning more. And the light and it lit a fire underneath me to, first of all, become a better parent to my own children. So then they will be better parents, and their children will be better parents, and every generation after me to come. And second of all, it lit a fire under me to do my job even better. That it meant that my job is so important. And it lit a fire under me to do it with more passion and more purpose and more heart. So I challenge all of you to open your mind, open your heart to learn, to know more, and to speak out for just one child, to hear them, to help them. And don't be afraid of how speaking out for them may affect you. Be afraid of how not speaking out for them will affect them. And remember how the ripple effect goes out throughout our society and how that one act has the potential to change so much. Remember how speaking out for them not only helps the child, but it also helps the parent. Thank you so much for listening to me. I appreciate it. Bye.